go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here today. The first thing on our agenda is to consider the minutes and approve them from our May 5th meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion for that purpose?
Move that the minutes be accepted.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Next on our agenda is the public comment period, so we'll go ahead and open that up. Is anybody here from the public to speak today? Just for general comments? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. The first item up for approval on our agenda for preliminary approval is consideration of the request of ECG Edge Hill LP for preliminary approval of the issuance of not to exceed $60 million multifamily housing revenue bonds in one or more series. So we do have a public hearing for this preliminary approval. Is there anyone here to speak from the public on behalf of approval or disapproval for this item?
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh,
No.
Is it your? My bad.
You're good.
You first. Sorry.
Oh no, you're great. I was like, you're welcome to speak on behalf of Edge Hill. I think that's our first one on the agenda.
Let's see. Yep.
Wonderful. Yes. Hey y'all, I'm Elsie. It's good to see y'all again. I'm here with Elmington Capital Group. We are the developer here on this project. This is a phase 2 of a project that we have just on the street that we worked with you all on. That one was 290 units, and this one is a 215 unit, 1 through 4 bedroom development. And we are requesting a preliminary inducement of $60 million. This is a new construction project. We'll be applying for THCA's round 2 bonds that are due today, and happy to answer any questions that you all have, or Cindy and I are talking, give any context to the market as well that we're seeing and the demand there in that area. And the phase 1 is called Hillside Flats, so this one's just right down the street.
Yeah, would you talk more about the demand in the area? And
Yeah, we are seeing, I mean, our projects, we have over 2,000 units here in Davidson County. The demand is high. Our projects are seeing a large wait list for applicants to get in. All of the projects that are under lease up right now are leasing up very quickly. And so we know that there is still strong demand here in Nashville, and hope to continue to do projects here. The caps on the projects for THCA have gotten to the point where construction costs have risen, and so we're doing a little bit smaller projects. So that's why this project is 215 units instead of some of the projects we've seen that are closer to 250 or 300. And so, but still seeing very high demand for really the 1 through 4 bedroom units. All 4 have been leasing up really strongly.
These are capped on this project at 60% of AMI?
Yes, that's correct. All the units will be capped at 60%.
Have you guys looked much at income averaging, or do you do that?
Yeah, we do. We typically income average depending on where the projects are. So we're income averaging on a project that we have down in Franklin, Tennessee, and then we have one in Knoxville as well. Here in Nashville, it's a little bit more challenging to make those numbers make sense and work. So it is helpful when you can capture a greater percentage of tenants and serve a greater range of families. But for this project specifically, based on the market study and things that we have looked at in the area, this one makes sense just to keep it at all the units being at 60% AMI.
And it looks like you are right next to the housing projects?
Yes,
Is that
we
right
are.
in
Yep.
that area?
It's right in the Fort Negley, Edge Hill neighborhood. And our office, our corporate office for Elmington is right down the street. We're on Music Row.
Gotcha. And so this is centered around even reaching some of that, I guess, that group of people, or people who are naturally living there. Is this a project that is for that, or open to, I don't know what I'm trying to say. but I'm just looking at the
Students,
thing.
potential students.
Yes,
or other-
Yeah, we have,
Low
12
income families and all of that.
That's
that we're-
correct. Low-income
okay.
families, this specifically will be targeted for families. So our 12th and Wedgwood project is just right down the street as well. So we definitely have a good understanding of the market in the area here. There are families that are either in the Hillside larger development. When we did our Hillside Flats project, that was 290 units. We took over a 20-acre affordable project that was 290 units, and then we put 290 units on 4 acres. And there's still plenty of families or extended family that were looking for more housing, exactly. And so,
Into that. Okay, I got it.
but very much, so we love this area and the families here, and just excited to build more housing in that part.
To move out people, gotcha.
Do you have data on the families who were there previously and sort of how many stayed or how many
That's a
moved?
great question. I don't know the actual percentage, but there was a strong retention rate, and I could definitely follow back up with you on
Yeah.
what the percentage
Be
is.
curious
but
how
I'm
many
honestly
stayed and how many
curious,
moved
too.
on.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know that it was highly desirable to stay,
Yeah.
and so many of the families did. We're doing a single-family development and then a townhome development alongside the apartments that are already completed, and so then this project will come in kind of as the last phase. But I would be curious what that percentage was as well.
So this, I'm just repeating back to you what
Yeah.
you said. This is the last phase of this sort of geographic footprint?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Got it. Great.
There's some construction still going on, so if you go down Edge Hill now, you'll see there's some apartments going up. Those will be market rate, and they're right along Edge Hill. And then the affordable development is behind the current apartments, and then the single-family and townhome development is kind of further along. So if you're going towards Wedgwood, in between Edge Hill and Wedgwood, that's where the single-family and townhome development is. And then this will be the final phase
Got it.
of the overall 20 acres.
Generally, how much money does someone need to make? I mean, maybe it's easier because it's gonna be different for different bedroom sizes, but
Yes.
you're capped at making, because you're not income averaging, capped at making 60% of AMI. But
Yes.
like, if you make 20% of AMI, you guys probably wouldn't qualify them to live there because they don't make enough money. What generally is the math?
So there's housing choice vouchers that actually a
sure.
tenant can, so we will accept those obviously at all of our developments.
Yep.
So if a tenant makes 30% of AMI, but they have a housing choice voucher, then they can come live there as well. So
Of
even though
course.
there wouldn't be project-based vouchers, then we will be able to serve, families of lower income. The rents here would be, it's roughly $1,200 for a one, $1,200 for a one, $1,450 for a two, $1,650 for a three, and then $1,800 for a four. So those are the rough math, just based on the rents today. When the project actually leases up in 3 years, then those will have changed and hopefully grown since then. But that's kind of that's the math on the units.
But absent a housing choice voucher, right?
Yes.
You're
Oh, the
you're
total
gonna
income.
say, hey, look, you make $1,000 a month. Like, you would be massively cost burdened to live here. You shouldn't
Yes.
live here. So like, there's some math. Is it?
It's roughly
So what I'm looking is like, is it 45 to 60? Is it 50 to 60? Is it 53 to 60? What's the income for someone absent an HCV?
Yes, it's roughly $55,000 a year.
Okay. For a one bedroom?
For a one bedroom. So that will change. That will slightly increase.
For the
a
twos
2-bedroom
and
is based on
threes, right?
yes.
There's a couple.
A person and a half. A three is, I believe it's 2 people, and then a 4 is 2.5.
Okay.
Of their income. So
Got it. Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks. Are there any more questions?
Just to put in perspective, what's the starting salary of a teacher or a police officer or a public defender or assistant district attorney in Nashville? Does anyone know?
I have to Google it. I think at one point teachers were sort of 42, police officers were in the mid-50s, but it escalates really quickly in law enforcement. So, particularly with overtime, you could be at 70 or 80 fairly quickly.
Okay.
But you know what, that's a great question. I knew it a couple of years ago, I had it all memorized. I don't know it off the top of my head now.
I'm just curious if a first-year teacher, right out of, would be able to afford a unit.
First year teachers are gonna come around, about 50K or so
Okay.
in Nashville.
Okay, so close. So if you're under, to Matt's question, if you're under 60%, but, maybe you have some cash, maybe you can get, whatever, could you still
You
potentially
can,
qualify?
yes, you can qualify, 60% and under can
Okay.
qualify.
Okay. So if you're at 50, but maybe you don't have a car payment.
And we're still doing the analysis on this project, so in all transparency, it could be that these are 50 and 70% AMI units, and then we average them to 60, but it will absolutely average to the 60% AMI when we close on the project.
So a trainee in the police academy makes 65, and once you're a police officer 1, you're at 70.
But a teacher averages at 50.
Oh, yeah, anywhere between 45 to 56K.
And
Start.
then the neighborhood, thinking about the people who just live in that neighborhood would not qualify
Absolutely.
for that. Okay.
Any other questions?
Preliminary.
Anything else? Seeing no other questions, do I have a motion to approve on a preliminary basis this project?
I move that we approve on a preliminary basis.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay. With that, the preliminary approval passes. So we'll move on now to agenda item number 5, preliminary approval for the consideration of the request of 927 Skyline Ridge Drive for preliminary approval of the issuance not to exceed $60 million for multifamily housing revenue bonds in one or more series, and we do have a public hearing on this. Is anybody from the public here to speak on behalf?
I'm sorry, LC. I heard 60 million. That's the same amount that we're asking for approval for. I'm Carter Swayze. I am a development manager at Clear Blue, where I focus on ground-up, affordable, and workforce housing. We're really excited to bring this transaction and this future community to you all today. It's going to be 280 apartments of just 2, 3s, and 4s. And it's about 20 acres of land. The grade is quite elevated, but given that we were awarded the only large LIHTC property awarded by Round 15 Barnes Fund, we have the cost to cover that land. So what we're going to be focusing on is this going to be the hopefully the premier family apartment complex for 2, 3s, and 4 bedrooms because we have so much land and we have so much green space. We are going to be partnering with a nonprofit out of East Tennessee, Appalachian Home and Health. And we are really excited about this opportunity, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Elsie went first, so she got all the questions, but I assume the data is all the same information about price points,
Correct.
everything else is the same.
We are not doing income averaging. All units will be restricted to 60% of AMI.
You can send her a thank you note for going first.
I should have called you up
I know, I
to
should have gone
come
first,
join me.
That's funny.
You're also offering permanent supportive housing. Can you speak to that a bit?
Correct. So for our 2-bedroom units, there's about 70 of them. As of the Barnes Fund, we elected to do 25% permanent supportive housing. That will be coordinated through the Office of Homeless Housing. We have another community right down the road called Highland East where we're implementing that program and things are moving smoothly. And so we're excited to offer that specific cohort at our property because we know it's needed.
So what's the economics of that? How does that work?
So a lot of these homeless households will come with housing choice vouchers.
Okay.
And because of fair housing, they can't necessarily place you at a specific complex, so it's actually up to the resident's discretion on where they get placed. But For example, the Office of Homeless Housing will say, hey, here are 4 properties that we believe suit your needs best, and then the tenant would pick it from there.
So they have an HCV,
Correct.
but then what, are there other economics involved? Is there a sort of bonus payment for you guys for doing this? Or is it just you're accepting vouchers so they come, or are there wraparound services? What
Correct.
What are the overall
So
economics?
the economics are gonna be the housing choice voucher, which will charge the voucher 60% of AMI. And then from there, since it's gonna be very family programmed, I know that LDG and other, Elmington have done summer camps, stuff like that. We are planning on doing a large community building where there will be a birthday room, an event room outside of the birthday room, a teens room, because that's a lot of what the property managers have communicated to us, where they feel like there's a missing cohort a lot for the young kids and the elementary school age, but as they become teenagers, not much programming. And so we haven't identified specific services for the PSH units yet, but we're still in, by partnering with this nonprofit, we believe there will be some.
And the nonprofit is East Tennessee based.
Yes, ma'am.
What is their experience? I guess I'm thinking of like local context
Sure.
with them being East Tennessee based. And they may have just like different needs in East Tennessee than what, our
Fair.
communities may be facing here in Nashville. So, curious to know, I guess, about their experience of like what prompted that partnership to bring this.
It's a programmatic partnership, so we actually partnered with them on the property I mentioned that's in lease up right now. It's about 88% occupied. There we have that big community building and tenant events and resident events that the nonprofit helps with. And actually, when you asked Matt, it came to my mind, we actually have reached out to Isuzu. They do financial literacy, resident services programs, and we will be using them likely for this resident programming that we believe we will be progressing with. So to answer your question, they are East Tennessee based, but they coordinate with our properties here in Nashville as well.
Have you gotten into contact with the council person of that?
Yes, ma'am. We have a letter of support that I wasn't able to print out today, but I believe Cindy sent to the chair from Sean Parker.
Okay.
He's really excited about the project, and we've met with him. The property was actually zoned in 2014, and we asked if we needed to do a community meeting, and he said no, given that we're gonna be doing the same type of prototype that was zoned in 2014, we don't need a community meeting, so.
On the permanent supportive housing, is that available to individuals or families only?
So since it's a 2-bedroom, there's a little bit of optionality. There can be individuals that pay that. With the housing choice voucher, there are exclusions. I actually talked to MDHA on Friday, where if somebody has needs-based, that they can give them a 2-bedroom voucher, even though they're a 1-person household. But primarily, it would be a 2-person household.
Do they get back on their feet? Do they then suddenly become unqualified for the permanent supportive housing, or how do they transition?
The life cycle of that would be they would earn more money than the housing choice voucher allows, and hopefully that would be enough money for them to be at the non-restricted units at 60% AMI. And then if they earn more than 60% of AMI, they actually get to stay in the property. So that's one upside of the tax credit program, is you can come in making 40 grand and leave making 80, but still have transitional housing without having to move out. So you don't ever out qualify, as long as you don't move properties.
Is there a term on the lease for the individuals receiving the permanent supportive housing?
I'd say market is 12 months. If there's an issue with leasing, which we don't believe there is in Nashville, given the velocity of households moving here as well as people being displaced, I'd say 12 months is the minimum. But if there was something that came up that we need to do a shorter lease time, we'd be open to that for those specific units.
So they qualify with the HCV, then they transition, and then they go to fair market?
No, ma'am.
No.
They stay at that 60.
It's at
There's
60, okay.
There's 2 levels. There's the
12 months.
HCV, and then they can renew after that as well, even if they're making above 60. So one of the good things about the program.
they continue on the HCV by the end of their term, are they qualified to re-up at the same level?
Currently, under federal legislation, they are able to keep that for a while, but there could be some changes coming where there's like a 2-year cap. But that cap has been proposed in the past and not implemented.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. You pass.
Thank you all.
So next up on our agenda, we have an amended final approval for the Artist Lofts LP for an amendment to its final approval of the issuance of the bonds not to exceed 68 million. Ready when you are.
Yeah, good to see you all. Reed Lauer with Holiday Ventures. So we were last here in March for final approval, which passed. Since then, we had to change the structure of the bonds to basically make the project financially feasible. Nothing else about the project has changed since the board last approved. Simply just an amendment of the bond structure, really allowing the project to yield a little bit more proceeds during construction to fill the financing gap. So happy to go into more detail or answer any other questions, but nothing else has changed since the previous final approval.
Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And the ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes the items for approval. We do have some informational items here at the end of the agenda, and you all are welcome to stay if you'd like. First item on our informational agenda point is an update on the Belmont Village project. I believe that may be coming from.
Hey everyone, Mick Nelson with Nelson Community Partners. You may recall we were here last December and we're incredibly grateful for your preliminary approval of a bond inducement for that project that was still in its relatively, admittedly, early stages. But by doing so, you preserve the qualified census tract status, which allowed it to be financially feasible and us to continue to move forward. We hurried to make this all happen. Really appreciate your support. Since then, we've had the project rezoned with the exuberant support of the councilperson, Terry Vo, and very excited. So it's been rezoned. There were a few folks still living on property, as we shared last time. They have all since found new housing at the exact same rents in much nicer apartments. So. One example is someone signed a 4.5-year lease to keep their rent the same over a very extended period of time. So lots of good news in that regard, and perhaps even better news is that we also went ahead and applied for 9% low-income housing tax credits. So as you guys probably, I'm sure you know, the bonds allow developers, like you've seen today, access to 4% tax credits, but thankfully we went ahead and applied for the 9% credits, given the great location right on 12th South and the population it was serving. And appears the preliminary ranking came out and we were awarded a 9% tax credit allocation for this project. So we will not be needing to move forward on our preliminary inducement, and really thank you for your support last December to allow us to continue moving forward. And this is going to be an incredible development. So thank you all, and I think that covers most of the updates. So thank you.
Thank you for coming before us to give us an update. That's really helpful. The next item on the agenda is a report on the debt obligations from Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Do we have anyone here to speak to that?
This is just an information item. After each bond issue closes, then we send the board for the next meeting. It's just, there's no action required,
Okay.
just so you know it's done.
And then next we have some member orientation and goals. So I think Cindy has a few items. I'd like to just open up the board for discussion on what we see as our goals for this board and how we can be effective in shaping a city that's more affordable for everyone. So if anybody has any ideas, I think this would be a great time to discuss those, and just we don't get to talk outside of our meetings at all. So it'd be a great way here to, I think, just get a feel for what we want to do with this board. You all are welcome to stay, but don't feel obligated. So, does anybody have anything? Cindy, you had a few items I know that you wanted to speak to.
I have goals for each of you. So, one, because we do see so much affordable housing, I hope all of you will read the Mayor's United Housing Strategy that just came out in the last several weeks. Because it just helps, identify what's happening in our city, which we hear a little bit about when we have meetings, but it also goes through all the different available options, and we certainly have experts here that live in this world every single day in their professional lives, but I think it's just helpful for you all as members to continue to educate yourselves about what's happening in the city, because as important as this piece is, it is but one small piece of the bigger puzzle, and it serves a role, which kind of gets back to why was the board created? Well, the board was created back in the 70s under state statute. These types of boards exist all over the country. As a financing mechanism, it's an effort to lower the cost to the borrowers that come before this board. That's why people come see you, because they think financially they're going to, as we heard with Artist Lofts, coming through here, the market is so challenging always, but especially right now seems to be that this is one option that people are always looking at to see. And it's, we see a lot of affordable housing. I went back just because I was curious over the last several years kind of what the board has seen. So just to get some perspective, this calendar year, it's August already. We're 8 months into the year. One affordable housing financing has closed this year. Only one. That's very telling to me. Last year, 4 closed. So it seems when we tend to see a lot of folks come through, they don't all make it through. We've talked about this before because this part of the financing is one piece of it. There's several layers, and all the layers have. People are nodding that do this every day. I ask them if they'd like to make comments to chime in, feel free, but this is just one of the layers, so they've got to find all the different layers to make each of these work. Anyway, so last year was 4. This is just affordable housing. 23, 8 financing, so some of those are just now starting to come online. So we're starting to see some of the fruits of some of that labor. 22, 9. That was our highest year ever of affordable housing financings that came through this board. Same thing, a lot of those are just now starting to come online. Then 21, interestingly enough, coming out of the pandemic, 7, and then it just drops dramatically, 4, 3, 2. I mean, it's just, so we've kind of seen a bubble. 22 was the highest, 23, 8. But then last year was only half of that at 4. And so it just tells you, well, it tells me there's still a tremendous need is what we're hearing. But these folks have to continue to look at all the options that are out there just to see. So I would say affordable housing historically over the last bit is kind of the largest industry we see come before us, but there's always a but. Other eligible borrowers, Vanderbilt Medical Center, by pure dollars borrowed, I would say is the largest borrower. Primarily that was triggered in 2016 because they created their own entity and bought all the healthcare operations, the hospital, from the university. So that split came through this board, and so that was a dramatic, almost $1 billion. The purchase of all the assets of the hospital. But as you all have seen, Vanderbilt Medical Center, looking over the last few years, they tend to come every year, sometimes twice a year. So in terms of just they borrow, and as we know, they were just at the last meeting, large amounts of money, because when you're at that scale, you know, every interest rate saving, everything, obviously that matters to everyone, but they're at such a much more significance. They borrow in the hundreds of millions. I would say that Vanderbilt University is probably right behind that. We haven't seen them as much, but they were here last year with some new dormitories. Those are just starting to come online. So, you know, other examples, we've seen Belmont. Some of y'all have seen Belmont come through. They've done some dormitory financing through the board. Same with Trevecca, Lipscomb. I mean, those are some others. And then other nonprofits that are, I will say, kind of have specialized types of projects. Centerstone has come through the board. We've seen some group homes for the mentally disabled come through the board. Some of y'all remember some of these. So they're just those types of borrowers. The statute's pretty limited what types of folks can come before the board, and so that's why you see a lot of repetition. Some of these folks are much more familiar. You come to enough meetings, right? You see familiar faces, but so to me, it's just, you know, kind of all of us, and we can always do a better job just answering any questions y'all have, just making sure you're getting the information you need to just understand why are these people here and what are the challenges they're facing, how does this board kind of fit into that. And so one of the other things I mentioned to Tyler, and Becky's sorry she can't be here. She was in Hawaii, just got back, immediately jetted off somewhere else. So we can ask her next meeting how she spent her summer vacation. She's probably going to watch the video and know I said that. You've probably seen her at yoga between her trips. But anyway, so one other idea I just mentioned to Tyler before the meeting, if it's helpful to you all, we can either have community experts, which some of these folks in the audience I'm sure be happy to come just under public comments every now and then during a meeting, just like cover 5 minutes of this topic with us. I'm sure they would be very willing to do that. Or if you'd rather at the end of the meeting, but I thought even have somebody from the city come from their, you know, housing division, just to continue to educate all of us, you know, what's happening, where you're not under pressure to make a decision, but just so you can continue to educate yourselves, and I can continue to learn more about what, you know, what are the programs that are out there, where do you all fit into that, and what are the challenges. I mean, you all ask great questions, and I'm proud of every one of you for, you know, jumping in, and Matt certainly has a lot more housing background, but it's just we can all learn from each other. So I've talked too much. I want to hear what you all have to say.
I have I have a couple of follow-up questions, but one in particular, when you shared the data around, kind of, you know, like the trends of affordable housing units that have come through over the past few years, do we collect data on like the source of the fall-offs? So when I think about with Belmont, how they came to share, like, hey, we actually no longer need to do this, you know, is that information collected in any way to allow us to better understand, I guess, like the trends or of what's causing folks to basically not make it through, whether it's...
Well, and that's a great question. We have that data, and so much of it is, it's publicly available, but you have to know where to look, which kind of gets back to all of us continuing to educate ourselves. The THDA website, the State Housing Agency, they track who applies. So, for example, back earlier this year, they tend to have 2 rounds each year. So one round was earlier this year, so we saw a very busy March meeting. A lot of people wanted to jump on that agenda, apply to THDA, because THDA requires they come to us first before they can even start the process. So you see a lot of these folks, including the Belmont, way before they have had an opportunity to gather all the market information they need to really decide what to do. So you see them at the very beginning of the process. That's just legally, that's the framework we live within. But of all those applicants that went to THDA, we have one that's moving forward. 3 or 4 others were approved by THDA, but they determined after applying that they just couldn't get it to work financially. they just couldn't move forward. And so statistically, that's one way I track it, is looking at THGA. Round two, THGA tends to give a very narrow window, and LC alluded to it. Today's the absolute last day that folks can apply for round two. We only had 2 folks come today. We have one other, and Josh is here, that's been before the board before with LDG, and they're still current in their preliminary approval, so they're, as far as I know, still intending to apply. So we'll have 3 that apply in round 2. Will all 3 move forward? Maybe, but maybe not. I mean, these are all experienced developers that you've seen multiple times, and it's a struggle for everyone. I mean, it's not, there's, no one's being singled out. And so I'm happy to provide maybe that's something we can do that would be helpful, just provide regular updates. Okay, we saw this many come, this many are moving forward. You tend to see them once they've gone through the THGA process. They've got to identify their lenders. They've got to have all their financing put together before they ever come back to you. And so you're right, some of them never come back. Either the site didn't work out, there were other challenges with the site that were financially, they just couldn't make it work. They've got other pressures in their, whatever. Did I sort of answer your question?
That's helpful. And so essentially one of our key objectives is we're kind of evaluating the financial viability of the projects like they're coming to us. We're getting the information and making sure it's in alignment with what our statutes say should happen for folks to be able to get the approval for the bonds. That's it, and I'm posing it as a question to check my understanding.
I agree with you. So let me is this intended, we had talked about having sort of a session to talk about the role in the process. Is this that, or
This is the beginning of that, yes.
Okay.
So, as long as folks want to stay, I'm all yours, so let's, I don't know if people have time constraints.
I mean,
It's-
I have the same question, and I'm new to the board, so some of you all may understand this from previous, but I think it would be very helpful to have a session where we talk through, for each of the kinds of borrowers that have come through, sort of, here's the process that they go through, in a very sort of simplistic way. We don't need to get into all the details, because to your point, in someone's, I want to make sure I'm clear on what role we play. Are we supposed to be doing financial due diligence? Should I be analyzing the numbers to understand if the pro forma makes sense? I don't think that's my responsibility. Am I supposed to be evaluating legal compliance with statutes? That requires a very different skill set. Or, and I'll just be blunt, are we a rubber stamp? And we should just be a rubber stamp. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But if we're a rubber stamp, we don't need to be spending a bunch of time doing a bunch of stuff. Just run them through and stamp them and let's go. That saves them a bunch of time and effort. I just want to make sure I'm clear what the expectations and responsibilities are so that we play the appropriate role. I will say, just one last bit of this, even if we are a rubber stamp, that doesn't mean we can't be a pain in the ass roadblock. I mean, if someone has an issue and they need to come through here, you can do it, but I want to be very clear. You're a rubber stamp and you are screwing up a process because you want to make a statement. And that's okay, that's civil disobedience. But that is a very different role and architecture of responsibilities than, hey, you guys are the financial stewards of the city and you need to be protecting the financial interests of the city. Both of those are great things. I just want to make sure we're clear on what we should be doing and shouldn't be doing so we can allocate our time as an unpaid board in the most appropriate way possible.
I mean, yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well was, sure we can approve everything that comes through here. There's not really I think, a policy role for us necessarily, other than we could say we're not going to approve anything that's over 60% AMI, or we're not going to approve anything that's in X part of town or Y part of town. I think, is there any taste for that on the board to try and set those? Is there any need for that? I mean, that's one of the things that I'd like to talk through as a board to make sure that we're not just a rubber stamp, that if we are going to be, at least we can, if there's a need, if there's a desire, we could shape the policy of the housing, affordable housing in the city to the extent that that's appropriate and desired by the board. I guess I'd love to have that conversation. So that's one of the things that I'd like to see discussed as a board as well.
And along those lines, to provide clarity to the applicants, like,
Right.
here's what our expectations are when you come here. Be very clear about it, like, these are our expectations. Like, I think these guys navigate a really Byzantine structure, and they know how to do that. The one thing that I know for certain is clarity and certainty is incredibly helpful. I can play the game, just tell me what the rules are. And so I think that's for us, both clarifying what our expectations are and then articulating that clearly to them. Then if somebody shows up and we told them we want purple maps and they don't bring purple maps, that's on them. Like, we told them we want purple maps, and like, then they can say, well, you shouldn't be asking for purple maps. We can have that conversation, but like, let's provide some clarity.
And I think Cindy has shared with us before, like, your agreement that we need some type of onboarding as new members or as existing members, refresher type of situation, so that we all kind of are on the same page as to, you know, what we can do, what we can't do, what we can say, what we can require, what we can ask for within the statute.
We talked about it, you know, I know that was one a while ago, because I'm going on my 6th year, I can't believe it. And so we were talking about putting together some type of metric or some type of guidelines, because it was becoming a bit redundant, asking the same questions, and we really weren't sure. I can speak for myself, I just wasn't sure if it was really panning out, you know, how things were done. And so I do really believe, and even though we've had different members, I feel like we lost a lot of members between this time quite frequently, for me, through those 6 years. But I still think that it is necessary to have some type of structure, something in place, some type of guidelines to where we understand what is happening, and then those that are coming to us, you know, there's something that's very clear that is in place. Because even for myself, over all of these years, I still have trust issues, you know, because we don't get to talk. And I think there was one time we had a meeting and we really talked to some of the developers, and we all were like, oh, we didn't know this, and we didn't know that you were going through that, and that, oh, how helpful that is for us to understand what the struggles are, and that you really are wanting to make a difference to create affordable housing. I know that there has to be a bridge for that gap to, even for myself, to understand the trust, knowing that if I am approving something, I know that you are going full-heartedly with good intention, you know, and there's not a displacement that is taking place in Nashville, you know, even more. But yeah, we talked about that, like just having some type of metric in place or some type of system in place. We never did it. And that onboarding piece, I think, is really good.
Can I also add, and I think that we've also brought this up, but again, for the record, what it looks like for the part that we play in the process. And so what I really appreciate is that now we're getting invited to more and more groundbreakings or more and more dedications, because we are like in the beginning of a process. I mean, some of them have been through planning and, you know, codes and that kind of thing, but, you know, are now have to have us before they get to THDA or before the state or whatever. And so we never get the opportunity to see the whole flow of the project. And so it is helpful now to be able to hear back from developers toward the end of the project after we, you know, made a determination early on. But we had talked about some point before, like, how does our silo, how does our compartmentalization track with their entire project? And so, I mean, we have no accountability there's no accountability for us to be able to do. I mean, I don't think that we have any right? Or, you know,
Well, you don't have powers under your
power,
statute.
power to be able to demand that. But might it be helpful for us to know what they've already done, what they've already gotten done? I mean, and we ask that, you know, how many people will be displaced? Have you talked to your council person? What is the buy-in from your community, et cetera, et cetera? But what's that accountability look like?
But I think that goes back to Matt's kind of earlier point of us getting in alignment on like what's our
What is the
objective, and
purpose?
then,
Yes. Once you
we
can
can
hear, what
better
do you-
get clear
Yeah.
about that. I think that's something that we're able to essentially.
When you come and make your
Determine,
presentation or
like,
your appeal, these are some things that we'd like to be able to know.
Well, I think that's it. These preliminary approvals give you an opportunity to ask all your questions and then set, you know, just like McNelson coming back on Belmont Village, you know, y'all said we would really like an update. Don't just show up for final approval, give us an update. And so I think, you know, that's a mechanism you can do. You are somewhat limited by your state statute. This is not a policy-making board. You don't have those, you don't have those powers. You know, you've got the planning commission, you got codes, you got all these other, you know, entities in the government that play certain roles that you do not. You're also not the banker. We have no money. We don't have a bank account. This board has no monetary assets, so it's these guys that are putting their monetary assets at risk. And that's good. I mean, that's the way it should be. But, you know, I think it's great to hear more from the communities you're serving.
Yeah.
And going to the groundbreakings, which I try to always go. You meet some of these residents, some of the neighbors, some of the, you know, students moving into the dorms that wouldn't have a place to live otherwise. It's just, I mean, and dormitories are kind of the new thing because it's less expensive than trying to live, you know. And you meet some of those folks and you are really touching a lot of lives out in the community. That's what's, you know, interesting to me.
Yeah, one other question I have, as you brought up like dormitories, is because we talk a lot about the affordable housing component of the work that we do. I'm also interested in learning more about the educational facilities aspect, right? Because it was surfaced that like Belmont, and you know there have been some asks, but also getting an understanding of the process when it does come to how we support local educational institutions, and like what do those asks typically look like? Are they oftentimes for dorms, or are other projects that fall in, you know, that fall under what they can come to seek approval for through us, would be helpful, because that's something that since I've been on the board, like haven't seen those asks often.
Yeah, and those are, well, y'all that have been on the board, it's pretty infrequent. It tends to be seasonal. You might see 2 or 3 and then you don't see any more for a bit. I have what I call my little meeting cheat sheet. It's a page and a third. And my very first question on here, when we get contacted, is this an eligible borrower under our statute? Do they even qualify to come before us? Maybe, maybe not. We field a lot of calls of folks that honestly, they don't fit within our powers under the statute. And then, if they are an eligible borrower, like a nonprofit, is the type of project they want to pursue eligible under our statute? It may not be. It depends what they're asking. The Life Flight Helicopters last meeting was interesting, and Vanderbilt's come before the board before when they bought their first Life Flights, but that was kind of an unusual, different type of request. I can tell you the communities that they're bringing those new helicopters to, I mean, they just can't, it's just phenomenal. Clarksville gave them a front page headline. I mean, it's just interesting, once again, kind of the lives you're touching that's out there. Anyway, the board has a debt management policy. Tennessee government requires all these types of entities have a debt management policy, and as your lawyers, our job's to protect all of you, make sure you're staying in your lane. You know, your lane is not the planning commission, that's a different process. And so another example, you have no money. So the borrowers whose money is at risk, they pick their banker. you know, they have to get credit approval. That's outside your purview. You need to know they're doing it.
But the Industrial Development Board does have a bank account. It does charge
That's a
application fees, and
yes.
there is a different structure. Can I suggest this? It sounds like there's broad consensus that we would like sort of a A to Z. Sounds like you've got maybe the outline of something.
The cheat
For us to
sheet.
stay in
I
our
hope
lane,
so.
to, you
I
know,
hope
to know
so.
what.
And this may have happened in the past. You may have done an orientation in the past. May I suggest that the next meeting, and if it's not the next meeting, we can schedule a meeting or whatever, we have this be the focus or a focus of the meeting. I'm appreciating this information, but it would be more helpful to me as opposed to you sort of saying these things, that there's like a presentation, like a discussion. And may I suggest for us board members, and any Becky board members who are watching this later, to submit our questions to you to make sure that it covers the things that we want it to cover. I have some ideas in my head of like a slide that looks like this, a slide that looks like that. But I think we can take the responsibility, each of us, to say, to ask you the questions we want to cover, and then for you to cover sort of this process so that we can come out of that. Not that that's going to resolve everything. There may be further discussion that comes out of it. Okay, now that I understand this framework, like what I'm really interested in this, and maybe we do things, but at least there's a framework there. I would like that.
So are we talking about sort of general rules that would apply to specific types of proposals?
Well, I don't think that we're even close to that. I think that what we're starting with is this cheat sheet. How does a process come to us? What is the process that the applicant has gone through? What is the context for this ask? What do the statutes allow us to do? What are our expectations? What are the things we should be asking questions about? And what are the things that, like, quite honestly, we can ask questions about because we're interested, but like, it doesn't matter what they answer. They could say yes or no. So you can keep asking the questions, it just, we all know it doesn't matter. Though you can still ask questions, even if it's not for our votes, we're asking the questions because we want someone out in the audience to blow the deal up for some other reason. I'm not saying that's not a legitimate reason to ask questions. I just don't even know the answer to the questions yet. Like, I don't know what I have jurisdiction over. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing. And I'm willing to admit that because I'm brand new to this. So I'd like to have that set of meetings. Look, we're gonna see 3 categories of borrowers. Educational facilities, this many have been done in the last few years. And these are the kinds of things they're generally asking for, and here's the process they usually go through, right? Which is different, right? They're probably just saying, Vanderbilt's financing a dormitory, like, it's all done within Vanderbilt. Affordable housing, we're gonna see LIHTC deals, and we're gonna see these other kinds of deals. Maybe it's just LIHTC, I don't even know. But like within LIHTC deals, just so you know, you're gonna see them 3 times, and you're gonna see them at this point, and they gotta go through all these other things, and here's your role. And then we're also likely to see this 3rd category, and we've done 2 of those in the last decade, and so that next time one of those comes, you're like, oh, okay, this is a LIHTC applicant, they just need to get a sign off from us so they can submit their first round, and they're gonna go to TDH day, and they're gonna come back around, I know what this is. I can still ask questions or not ask questions, but I know what this is. And I know if I'm gonna see this, and so I can choose to like read every legal document because I really care, or I can be like, this is a preliminary approval, like, I'm not gonna spend an hour of my time reading a thing that like may or may not ever happen. I just wanna know so that I can make a more informed decision about how I'm spending my time and where I'm applying my energy and my effort.
That's what we are.
So I think
And
that's
then,
fine.
after that, if people wanna come up with rules or whatever, that would seem to be appropriate.
I think the thing though is we meet so infrequently and we have so much turnover that by the time we keep on pushing the can down the road when it comes to making rules. So, you know, it could be another year or 2 years before we sort of promulgate some rules, whereas I feel like we have enough knowledge to start off. You know, we don't have to like just, you know, this could be a continuing process. But like I'll just throw out 2 rules, and I'm not even convinced of them, but I just want to throw them out there just for discussion. We don't have to, you know, no need to approve them today, or anything like that. But if somebody's coming to us and they are proposing to renovate an existing project, we need detailed information on who's being displaced, how long they're being displaced, what accommodations they're gonna face, and if it's a situation where the project's being demolished and they're building, rebuilding from the ground up, then we need to know if they can afford to move back. That's just one, just for the sake of, just something to think about. Another rule, and I'm not convinced of this, but again, I want to throw it out there, is that, we hear a lot from people proposing, we hear a lot from some of these proposals about how, we had a community meeting. Sometimes we don't hear that. About community meetings. Sometimes there are community meetings and sometimes there are not.
And council support.
Right.
Councilperson support.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, honestly, there are some council members where if they didn't support it, I'd be like, that doesn't really affect my vote, but there are some council members, like Sean Parker, for example, where, if he supports it, he does his homework, he's in touch with his constituents, that means a lot to me. So I'd at least like to hear if there is council member support. It shouldn't be determinative on how we vote, but we should at least hear that. And then I also don't think, I think at some point we want to think about, do we want to require community meetings? I don't think that's that much to ask for. We're being asked to approve, really expensive projects, to just have a community meeting. And if nobody shows up, nobody shows up.
For which, so with all due respect, you've been on the board, so you have so much more knowledge than I do. I don't have.
So much more knowledge.
But I think what you've heard from a lot of people is we don't have the knowledge to know if this is even a realm of questions that we should be asking or requirements we should be imposing. So I think the ask is like, let's just have the meeting, and these sound like they may be awesome rules.
But it's for longer members, so it's a dual process.
Yeah,
So we need an onboarding.
Have a meeting.
What's our power and authority?
What is that? And then for those that have been on the board a little bit longer, these are the questions, because we've known exactly what is going on. But I would still love the onboard, and I don't
But I think we can do both.
This is 6th year, and I'm like,
To y'all's point, so maybe what I would like to propose is like our next meeting, even though we know they're kind of ad hoc, but our next meeting, resuming this conversation with the intent of us aligning on, here is our purpose and what we're doing. We get a consensus, so we're all in alignment with how we're going to proceed. And then the second phase of that is continuing the conversation around, okay, we know exactly what it is, what our objectives are, what our power and authority as this board is, what we have the ability to ask for or require, or what we don't, and then from there, us establishing the guidelines. Because to your point, I think, we don't want to kick the can down the road. So if we make those markers, okay, next meeting, we're going to set the foundation. Meeting immediately after that, then we get more clearly defined parameters for how we will engage with folks that come before us.
And just to piggyback, I know we're our project, but just to piggyback on that just a little bit, does that need to be a publicly held meeting, or can we schedule? Is there something that prohibits us from having like a board retreat? I don't know if that's a thing in government.
If you're discussing board business.
It needs to
if
be.
you all are discussing board business, then it needs to be a public meeting.
Okay, then, that's fine. Because we don't have a regularly scheduled meeting.
Can we call one and it be public, but it's
Still
specifically
be
for us to
no
do
agenda
this?
items
not
other
necessarily
than-
that we're approving something.
Absolutely.
This
You
is
can
the
meet
other,
whenever you
this is the
want
only
to.
agenda
How
item is
long
that we do.
do you, and we're asking a lot for you all. Let's presume we need a couple, 3 weeks to set a deadline, 2 weeks. Does 2 weeks seem reasonable to submit our questions?
yes, I can do it.
I'm like, to submit questions for sure, but to your point of like, what is the prep time? I guess to make sure.
So if we set a deadline for ourselves that we have 2 weeks from today to send you our questions, from that day, how long do you need to create the thing that we're talking about?
Well, before I answer that, we've received what I'll call soft inquiries for a late September meeting. So I think all this timing might dovetail if you want to do it while you've got a couple business items, if you want to do it.
I think that'd be wonderful, yeah.
So I think the timing should work
Is that enough time for you all to prepare
Well,
the
it
thing that
depends
we're
how
talking
many
about?
How many questions you get?
Depends how hard the questions were.
So is it that we want to do it before the potential next agenda items or
Or
during that meeting?
I think we might just do it at, everybody plan to stay the full hour, because if we only have 2 agenda items, it might not.
Bring a sandwich.
And I like the idea of the guidelines, like you said, like, I guess we don't necessarily have the ability to like impose a restriction on someone that you have to have a meeting, but I don't have to vote yes on something if they don't have a meeting.
Right.
And those kind of things I think would be helpful to understand what the board expects in order to get a just pass with flying colors, as opposed to, you know, sort of we begrudgingly vote yes or just vote no. It's entirely possible and appropriate, I think, for us to vote no if we don't like what is coming to us through a project, and that's the kind of things that I'd like to be able to set as a board. Here's what's okay, and here's what's not okay.
Because we are public citizens, you know, volunteers. And so I think that's a plus for the board, is that we all have different ideals. We come from many various backgrounds, and it gives a well-rounded look and insight into what is happening in Nashville, because we're all so different. So, you know, we do want to be able to utilize our voices, because we have a lot to say. You know, we're taking our time volunteering and doing that, so.
But for me, it's important because it does seem like we're somewhat of gatekeepers, that I'm making sure, like, I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, because we're essentially being, you know, representatives of, you know, the broader public. So, as I want to be clear about it, I'm a next steps type of person, so, because we've talked about a lot of things, so I want to be clear. So,
I'll make you your own cheat sheet.
yes, the next meeting, we're gonna come with the objective of staying longer so that we can get in alignment as a board, get clear about our role, objectives as a board, and then also begin to establish some clear guidelines and rules from there of what will help guide our approval or denials.
And if we can get those
I think that last piece, I might suggest that
We're submitting the
we'll figure it out. That, like, let's wait one meeting, like, let's get oriented, let's learn, let's understand.
Have a process.
And then, like,
that's in.
a month later, I mean, this has been going on for 6 years, like, I'm not suggesting we kick the can down the road, like, I'd like to have some time to think about it. It's not like you get oriented, now make the rules.
One bite at a time.
Whoa, let me
Yes.
let me think about it, let me reflect on this so that we're thoughtful about it. So I might suggest, let's do the 2 agenda items, get oriented, figure out sort of the things we kind of think we should and shouldn't be thinking about, and then with a goal of the next meeting coming forward, everyone brings ideas, and then we vote on them as a board, like,
I'm
or
with you
not.
on that.
And I would say, in between all of that, we can still be funneling questions or composing questions or things that we want included in the onboarding in the next 2 to 3 weeks or whatever, however much time it is, you know, things that we would like to be included in the onboarding section. And then we can also begin thinking about, you know, for the older board members, those things that we would like to be considered, the senior board members.
It's not any better.
Right. I thought you were saying
Seasoned board members.
We like that better.
What you know, going forward guidelines might look like. So it's both and, not either or. You know, it's not mutually exclusive. Let's just, I mean, because everybody's in different spaces, to your point, Kenya. So let's just everybody be where they are and do what they need to be doing to get what they need to be getting.
And there is no limit on questions. There's not an absolute. As long as you're on the board, you can ask questions anytime.
And will you be sending like an email kind of recap of the next step? To make sure, like, we're going.
I will be reminding all of you.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, is that legal? All right.
2-week deadline. Monday the 25th.
I love
To
it.
set.
Monday the 25th is the deadline to submit questions for what we want covered in the orientation.
August
Okay.
25th.
So moved. Second.
Monday, August 25th.
All right, I'll second that.
August
We all agree.
25th, I'm gonna be on vacation. You're not gonna get my questions by then.
I suggest potentially inviting potential borrowers so you can have a Q&A discussion So it might be a little bit more fluid of a.
Yeah, not Josh, though.
Full transparency, I'm vice chair of the Industrial Development Board, so I can also provide some perspective of how that board functions, or should function. And also from the development perspective. So I think there's opportunities to.
Be awesome.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Like a
Absolutely.
5-10-minute presentation, maybe on the agenda.
Do we make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
So moved.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Get